Welcome back to Let's Talk Sports. I'm CJ Tully, and there's lots to get to within the MLB. Let's talk about it. I hope everybody's doing well, and before we get into the weekend, there's some important things going on around the MLB that I want to discuss. Starting off most importantly with the cap and the floor that we recently saw proposed from the MLB when it comes to the salary cap for next season and going forward. We all know that there's a lockdown that's pretty imminent right now at this point within the MLB, that we're not going to have a season next year. But looking at the cap and the floor that they proposed, a $245 million cap and $171 million floor. Now, there's not much wiggle room in there. There's about $70 million within that. But when you look at the teams that are currently above this salary cap and the teams that are currently below, it really differentiates what these teams are going to have to do to either get up there or how much they're going to have to cut back on contracts to get down under the salary cap, which in my opinion, I don't know how they'll do. A lot of these players already on contracts. They backload a lot of these contracts as well. I think that was with all of this in mind. So I don't know how you could take money away, but obviously some of these teams could do more spending. The teams that are currently above the salary cap of $240 million is the Mets, Dodgers, Yankees, Blue Jays, Phillies, and Braves. So obviously the bigger market teams, the teams that have been playing well of late. Looking at the teams that are below it right now, it's more than half of the league. It's the Orioles, the Mariners, the Royals, the Reds, Brewers, Rockies, Twins, Pirates, Rays, Cardinals, A's, Nationals, White Sox, Guardians, and Marlins. A lot of your Midwest teams there, a lot of your smaller market teams are not spending the $171 million floor that they would have to going forward. Now, in my opinion, you do need a floor and a cap. I don't think it could just be a cap. I do think that teams are going to have to spend more money to be more competitive. I do think it's not very great for the sport of baseball when you have teams like the Pirates not surrounding Paul Skeens with talent. Now, this year they did go and spend a little bit more money and the team's playing better, but when you have players like that you're not surrounding, you're going to have great farm systems and everything else. You need to surround them with talent, and that comes with spending money, and a lot of these owners get greedy. There's changing different advertisements in the stadiums and everything to make more money, but they're not putting it back into the team. So I do think it's very important to have a floor here. I don't think we could just have a cap, so I like that it's proposed to have a floor and a cap. When it comes to the cap, I don't know how they're going to change up these contracts that already have been signed. You look at a lot of these contracts and they're backloaded. So for years on years on years, they're only going to be making more money are these players. So that's where I'm going to be curious as to how they can change it with a cap and where they're going to take away the money from these players, how they're going to differentiate all of that, how the players will feel about that as well. I think that's a very important piece of this. That's pretty much why we're not going to get a season next year, and why it's pretty much coming down to the fact that we won't, is because the players and these organizations and the big high-ups are never going to agree on what they want to do here. So the floor is set at 171, and the cap would be set at 245. Let me know you guys' thoughts on that. But going forward, outside of the big industries of baseball, I want to talk about some of the teams here because we've had some weird turnarounds here, and I also have some star players I want to mention. But starting off here with the Baltimore Orioles, and I talked about them last week, I believe it was, about how they just weren't playing well this season, how the fall-off has been happening since 2022. And they just kind of flipped the script for themselves this past week as they beat the Rays in a 3-game series. They swept them in that series. They won game 1 9-7, and this was the game that I thought was going to set the tone for the rest of the Orioles season. And that may sound crazy at this point. I sound like LeBron James, that I knew Kobe was going for 81 or whatever, but here we are, and I was watching this game, and you look at the Orioles and the way that they were bouncing back, and they're playing with the best team in baseball, one of the best teams in baseball, in the Tampa Bay Rays, and they were going blow for blow. They were answering back every time the Rays took a lead. The Orioles were bouncing back, and the energy was just there in that dugout, and that was something that was missing from this young Baltimore Orioles team for so long. So to be able to see them kind of turn that around, to see the energy going, they went in 13 innings, like I said, 9-7. You just saw the energy change, and that was very important for this Baltimore Orioles team. That carried over to a 6-1 win in the next game, and then an absolute offensive onslaught in the final game of the series, winning 11-2. In that game, you had Gunnar Henderson go for 2 home runs and 3 RBIs. Adley Rutschman, 3 for 4. Blaze Alexander, 3 for 4 with 6 RBIs. These are some of the guys that need to step up. They need to be, not Blaze Alexander necessarily, but the veterans on the team need to step up. The all-star talent on this team needs to step up. Pete Alonso, another one of those guys, has to step up and be the difference maker that they signed him to be. And I think we're starting to see that here with this team. We know the pitching is not going to be there. And I think if this offense can get going and can show some kind of momentum going into the trade deadline and the All-Star break, this Baltimore Orioles organization would feel more inclined to bring in some starting pitching and to help out this team. And I think that's where this team needs to be looking right now, is to stay afloat up until the All-Star break. Maybe bring in a Tariq Skubal, I don't know. But you bring somebody in, a big arm that can make a difference in this rotation to give you a fighting chance even when the offense maybe isn't putting up 9 to 11 runs a game. I think that's the most important thing to them. They did fall in their first game to the Blue Jays last night 2-1. That's going to be a big series for them as they're currently 10 games out of the division and just 2 games out of the wild card. But again, stay afloat till the All-Star break, and I can see the Orioles really turning things around at that point and getting in some new pitching, maybe some bullpen help as well, and really turning it around in the second half of the season. Moving on now to the Chicago Cubs. Cubs, who I talked about earlier this week, and they're coming off a 10-game losing streak as they've won their last 2 games, and it was all due to the offense. Ian Happ, in their first win off this 10-game losing streak, went 2 for 6 with 5 RBIs in a 10-4 victory. Again, veterans stepping up and turning things around for these organizations is what's going to be important. You then look at that second straight win they had. Ian Happ and Seiya Suzuki combined for 5 for 10 with 4 RBIs in a 7-2 win over the Pirates, and that one was against Paul Skeens. Now, I do want to do a quick little dive here on Paul Skeens because this is a continuous trend we're seeing here with Paul Skeens. Last night, he went 5 innings pitched, 4 hits, 3 runs, 1 earned run, 10 strikeouts, and a 6-5 record. Now, for a Pirates team that's really turned their page around, they've really turned around this chapter of Pirates baseball, Paul Skeens hasn't really been the biggest part of that, and that's weird to say. Again, last night was not a bad game, just 1 earned run, but a 6-5 record for a team that's playing very well, and they've been winning baseball games, just not on Skeens Day. And it's very interesting when you look at it in its broader picture. I don't think Paul Skeens right now is really one of your top competitors for a Cy Young. I do think that's going to fall down to, sadly, Mizorowski, but then Christopher Sanchez, who I think is going to run away with this thing. But it's very interesting to see that Paul Skeens just isn't having the greatest year when his team is finally having a great year there for him. Alex Bregman, going back to the Cubs, he needs to step up more, in my opinion. They brought him in here. They let go of Kyle Tucker. They let him go over to the Dodgers. But they bring in Alex Bregman to be that veteran leadership piece. He's hitting just .260, 697 OPS, 4 home runs with 17 RBIs. I think you need to see some more from him. The defense hasn't been all that horrible, but when you look at what he's doing at the plate, I do think he needs to step up and be a bigger presence on this team. Now, when it comes to the Cubs, and I mentioned this earlier this week as well, the IL is the biggest downfall for them right now. Justin Steele, Matthew Boyd, Cade Horton, and Eduardo Cabrera all finding themselves on the IL. Much like the Orioles, this starting pitching is where this team might fall down towards the end of the season. Is if they don't have that great pitching, the lineup can put up, like I said, the Cubs just put up, 10 and 7 runs in their last 2 games. But if that can't continue, because, they let up 4 and 2. If that doesn't continue with the offense, that's where you're going to start to see some problems here with the starting pitching not being able to just carry these teams. Shota Umunga's had a solid year, but besides from that, with all the IL stints, it's going to be hard to find that great start, that ace on your team right now, where you can go up and back them in a win. They are going to have a road series this upcoming weekend against the Cardinals, so we'll see what they can do there. But the Cubs starting to flip that page a little bit. They're not a bad team. They're my World Series team. Actually, so are the Orioles. That's my World Series prediction. But if these 2 teams could turn it around, I do see a bright future towards the end of the season for both of these teams. Now, before I get out of here, I do want to mention some star players that I've been meaning to talk about, just haven't necessarily gotten to it because of everything that's been going on in baseball. But starting off here with Ernie Clement, I think he's having a very sneaky, phenomenal season right now. He's hitting .293, a 764 OPS, 5 home runs with 20 RBIs. He really came on the scene last year in the playoffs for the Blue Jays, was a phenomenal piece. Extra base hits out the wazoo for him. And now this season, like I said, hitting .293, and I think it's very slept on. He's hitting towards the bottom of the lineup, but Ernie Clement has been a huge piece of this Blue Jays team this season. And finally, I'm wearing my Marlins hat, and that's because there's 2 players that I don't think are getting enough credit there just because of how the team plays. But you look here at Xavier Edwards. He's hitting .316 with an 877 OPS, 6 home runs, 19 RBIs, and 8 stolen bases. Xavier Edwards has been a huge piece of this Marlins team. He's been a huge piece that they were able to build around. I look to see him in the All-Star game. I do think he's going to be your starting second baseman there at the All-Star game. And then staying on the Marlins, Max Meyer, 5-0 this season with a .252 ERA, with 11 starts and 68 strikeouts. I believe he has 60 innings pitched. And an NL Cy Young race that's kind of heating up. I think that Max Meyer should be talked about a little bit more within this. He's been a big piece of this rotation for the Marlins. Sandy Alcantara just has not been the same guy. It's seeming like he's going to get moved at the deadline. If Max Meyer can keep it up, I think he's a really excited piece to watch here for the Marlins. He's going to be starting here on Friday night for the Marlins, so another great outing we hope to see from him. But that'll do it for me, guys. What stood out to you the most here within the MLB this week? Again, everything going on with the salary cap. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll catch you guys on Monday with another video. You can always follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Let's Talk Sports. Check out everything I do on my website at letstalksports.com. I'll catch you next time.